Hey folks, Doc here. I managed to make kind of a cool score. Had something come up on the Facebook Marketplace there, and it was one of those things where I couldn't make the phone call fast enough. Guy drove me nuts though. It took about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks to actually secure the machine because he was busy and he couldn't respond and yada yada yada. But you know what? It's all good. I got it delivered. And this is pretty cool. You've seen it before, but you haven't seen much of them. Stick around. Did somebody say mower? Yeah, baby, I can mow. I can mow a 7-foot wide path. Where was this when I was living in the country and I had freaking acres to cut? There it is, folks. A more or less complete, intact, and functional 1988 Bannerman. I don't even know where to begin on this thing. You can see though that I've got the roadkill approved temporary fuel tank though. The gas tank was full of junk. This thing had sat in a barn for about 5 years. It's got barn swallow crap all over it to prove. And it wasn't running, and I picked it up recently for a way good price. And it didn't take that much to get it running and mowing again. Had to clean the carburetor. Tank was full of shite, so obviously I bypassed that. So a little bit of carburetor cleaning. I did swap rear tires because the rear tires were absolutely done. The wheels that I have on this now are the wrong offset, but obviously they're holding the rear end up, so that'll do. But battery, carb clean, set of tires. Had to free up the reel clutches, and the throttle is stuck, so I kind of just set it in one position. But damn, this thing is so good. You folks will probably remember a few years ago I secured one of these chassis. I think one of the videos was called a Banner Day. And I had actually planned to build a MULE 3, and I had some pretty extravagant plans. And part of the reason that I didn't do anything with those plans is they were very extravagant. And you know, every time I dug down on it, I just thought, nah, I'm too busy to get into this right now. It's going to take too much effort. It's going to take too much work. I don't want to crack into this right now. It's going to take up too much space. Anyways, I do still have that chassis. Ultimately, hopefully something will become of it. I extended the frame rails and I added leaf springs for kicks and giggles. And that could still turn into something. But if you refer to the videos that I shot at the time, you can get a better look at the exposed guts of the thing, because obviously there's guards all over this one. But it's a really unique machine. It's got like a Doug Nash Enterprises 3-speed transmission. It's got a gigantic rear end that looks like it was originally sourced from the automotive world. It's got hydraulic drum brakes, which are seized in this particular case. The master cylinder is just stuck solid. No big deal. Cable actuated parking brake with the parking brake integral to the rear drum brakes, which is standard in the automotive world. It's got an 18 horsepower horizontally opposed Briggs & Stratton engine, and it's just a badass machine. But what the heck, let's have a look at what we got here. We got a suspension seat, which is cool. Here's the view from the driver's position, so to speak. And down there you can see that hydraulic brake master cylinder that was sourced from the automotive world, and sources are telling me that it was actually in use on a late 50s Hudson Hornet. So parts might still be available. I'll have to crack it open and see. There's the shifter. It's a Doug Nash T92, I think it is, 3-speed. They made them under several brands over multiple years. Olympic comes to mind too, and I think there was one other major brand that produced these things. Obviously you can't see it because of the guarding, but it's an H pattern shift, forward and rear. Gotta love it. Standard 3-speed, reverse is up and left. Very cool. So clutch and brake pedals, steering wheel, starter button, choke knob, throttle on the left. There's your data plate. Made in Rexdale, Ontario, Canada. Alright, so there's your horizontally opposed, 18 horsepower, Briggs & Stratton twin cylinder. Pretty standard fare stuff, and it does run very well. Cranks over easy as pie. Now, I believe that's a first gen unit, and it might even have breaker points. I haven't gotten that far into it, but it does run very well. All I had to do was a little bit of a carb cleaning. There's the back side of that brake master cylinder and some of the chain runs that are in there. If you refer to my other video, you'll see that the two B-belts coming off the engine, don't know if you can see all in there, goes into like a 90-degree angle gearbox. It's actually a T-box and splits off to run the reels and the transmission, everything the heck else. Extremely cool. Lots of good hardware in here. There's the bottom end of the steering box. Not sure where they sourced that from, but there's very little play in it. Excellent condition. I measured the fuel tank out at 33 by 22 by 28 centimeters, and according to the volume, that's about 5 gallons. That's a pretty big tank. That's a very big tank. Then again, these Oppies are thirsty, so it would need it. Here's a look at the rear axle and center section. As you see, it's got a very automotive style differential, and when I scored my first Bannerman chassis, I checked out the gear ratio, and I honestly don't remember what it was, but I think it was about 6-to-1. It was pretty steep. And here is the clutch mechanism for the rear reel, which is right there. And this is kind of an ingeniously simple little device. Just a lever with a handle, and when you move it over, it engages there and drives the shaft. And it's got a spring on it just to keep the tension so it doesn't, the collar doesn't rattle around loose and pop on and pop off. And it's pretty simply made. Just basically it grabs a couple of bolt heads with those two dogs. The forward reel mechanisms use basically the same style clutch, but it's underneath all this guarding so you can't really see it. But this handle here is what engages and disengages it. The clutches were kind of stuck to the shaft. I had to hit them with some penetrant and beat them around a little bit, but it wasn't that bad. And despite the fact that the reels could use a bit of a sharpening, well, they still cut. I ran the numbers on the engine, and it is the original engine. No big surprise there. But for a machine better than 30 years old, it's in really good shape. These things were very well built. Now, I suggested earlier that you might have seen these things before, but not many of them, and that's kind of because of the fact that they were manufactured right here in Ontario, Canada. I think at the time they were a relatively small company. I don't know what the production numbers look like. I don't know if they got exported anywhere, but you sure don't see many of them around. You have seen a complete, although modified one, running in at least one of my videos, and that was one of the trail toss videos shot a couple of years ago up in the Reely area. And my buddy Dane Morgan is rocking a 2-cylinder Kubota diesel in his ATV tires. I believe he finally locked up the rear end, etc., etc., etc. So you've seen them, you just haven't seen many of them. Frankly, these things are a unicorn, and for the $350 I gave for this one, that was a steal. I couldn't make the call fast enough. So what does the future hold for this wonderful piece of equipment? Well, I'll tell you. It's kind of being put out to pasture, but not retired entirely. I rescued it out of a barn, and before any purists say, oh, you should keep that intact, yada yada yada, hey, it's my crap, I do what I want. Anyways, even though I don't live on 10 acres anymore, I've kind of been missing having a workhorse around. And, Fugazi is a fun little toy. It's, I consider it a rally machine, go anywhere, do anything, just not do anything perfectly. And as you know, I'm building Boss Haas, and that's going to be kind of the heavy-duty stomper, mud mower, off-road king. But I don't really have a utility machine kicking around, and I don't like using my other toys for utility. I certainly don't want to tow with Fugazi, and it's not equipped to do so. And, with the way the rear end set up on that thing. I wouldn't want to anyway. So every now and then I've got a heavy trailer to move around the yard, or even a vehicle, and you know, I want something that I can tow with, pull with, assist with, you know, do yard work, whatever the case may be. So with all of that said, I'm kind of going back to my original plan way back when I secured the Bannerman chassis in the first place, and that is MULE 3. Mobile Utility and Light Extrication. Yeah, that's right. So the reels are coming off, and I've already promised them to my buddy Steve. It's Full Metal Fab on YouTube, and he believes he can put the reels to use on a machine of his. It's going to take a little fabrication, but I've got full faith in Steve. Now, my buddy Jeremy from Oddfathers Off-Road is getting the engine out of this. And, you know, he's kind of trading me some labor on that. So I hope he enjoys this engine. It's a good engine, I'm just not a big Oppie fan, and I got rid of all my spare Oppie parts a long time ago. So this is going to be capable of towing. I am going to put some beefy meat on it. Haven't decided if I'm going to lock the diff yet. Probably going to put a plow blade on it for the driveway. I am going to put an alternator, kick-ass charging system on this thing. I am going to install a winch. I have one more winch left. Some good lighting so I can see what I'm doing, especially in the winter time when it's getting a little dark and I'm plowing or whatever. And that leaves us with the engine question. Since I'm getting rid of the horizontally opposed 18 horsepower Briggs V-twin, what am I putting in? You know what I'd like to put in this thing? And I think it would actually fit with very little modifications, unlike anything else I've ever examined. That 40 horsepower, 1000cc Subaru V-twin. That's right. I think that twin has finally found a home. It's a great engine, you know, pressure lubed, yada yada yada. It's got an oil cooler, and I think this thing's gonna have 40 horsepower. Think 40 horsepower would do it for my purposes? Probably. In the meantime, every time I start this thing up, I smell mouse. You should have seen the hailstorm of mouse crap when I fired this thing up the first time. It was nasty, man. That stuff is still landing in Toronto. Well, it's starting to get windy again, so I think I'm going to park this thing and go inside and maybe get on some video production. What do you think? Anyhow, I'm super excited about this. What a machine. I'd like to thank you once again for tuning into Sprocket's Garage on YouTube. Until next time, take care of yourself.